Oh, nailed it. You missed my jokes.
No, sorry.
No, it's okay. So in order to bridge that gap, we decided to put together this course. Now, this is a 7-part series. You guys are getting part 1 today. The last 20 minutes or so, we're going to talk about structural evaluations, how I do them. And then we're going to finish by talking a little bit about how you guys, as buyer's agents or as listing agents, as part of your listing presentation, you can potentially do an initial walkthrough of the house and determine, hey, there are signs and symptoms of potential structural issues in this house. You're able to really kind of, talk to that potential seller client and say, hey, I would highly recommend you get this checked out by a general contractor, a foundation specialist, somebody along those lines. So I'm going to teach you how to do that today. Okay. So what to expect when I'm inspecting? Oh, I worked a minute ago. Come on.
All right, I got you.
Literally tested this twice.
Okay. What'd you do?
So I literally tested this twice.
Oh, like the whole thing.
Oh, you know why?
Oh, did you get into the?
Sorry, guys. Where's the
Maybe you just click on the presentation.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah, there we go.
Right?
Bingo. Got it. All right. So NCHILB stands for North Carolina Home Inspector Licensure Bureau, or Licensure Board, excuse me. We are governed by the Department of Insurance, believe it or not. Governed by the Department of Insurance. What we're going to get into today, we're going to talk about why we're here, which we just kind of touched on. We're going to talk about what we can hope to take away. Okay. So your takeaways today are, very simply, you will understand what I say when I say it in the way that I meant to say it. So, for example, who in this room has never done a home, never been present at a home inspection, never attended one, or hasn't had a buyer or client yet that requested a home inspection? Raise a hand. Never. Okay. All right. So you have zero experience in home inspection. If I said I inspected something, what does that mean to you? Say I inspected the foundation. What does that mean to you? What did I do? What do you hope I did?
You looked at it, it's good.
Just look at it.
I mean, make sure you're good.
No, you're right the first time. The word inspect in the North Carolina standard of practice, inspect literally means I walked in the house with my hands in my pockets and I looked. And I went, yep, foundation.
Encouraging.
Scary, right? Super scary. So when the home inspector looks at you, and I know not all of you use me, and that's okay-ish, but you have to understand that when that home inspector says they inspected something, what does that mean? And that's what we're going to get into. So we're going to go over key definitions. We're going to talk about words and phrases that we all need to know. I'm going to use the word we a lot also because I don't look at, as a home inspector, as a professional inspector, a licensed guy who's been doing this for several years now, I don't look at myself as a vendor, right? I know in your world, I'm a vendor. The way I look at it is vendors sell Cokes and hot dogs at baseball games. I'm not that. What I am to you and what I'm trying to be and what I've built my entire business model around is becoming a business partner to you.
Yep.
All of my systems and processes, all of my products, everything that I provide to you and to your client is solely designed to improve that client's experience in any way that we possibly can and improve your ease of use, right? So one-stop shop, one phone call, you can get everything taken care of. Reports in your hand the same day, if not as soon as the inspection's over, things like that. So as a business partner, we need to make sure that we are saying the same thing when we are talking to our client, okay? So, key terms. This is really small. I don't expect any of you to memorize any of this. There is no test at the end, I promise. But these are some of the key terms and definitions. We're also going to, Kate, you said you are recording this, and we also have access to the link where this is sitting, okay? So everybody will have access to this at some point today. So words like describe. Describe means to report in a system or report on a system or component in writing. Inspect means the act of making a visual examination. Installed means permanently attached or connected in a way that requires me to have tools in order to remove it. So if I say the home did not have a permanently installed or an installed microwave, what does that mean?
Sitting on the counter.
Say it again.
Sitting on the counter.
Just sitting on the counter. Did I test it? No, it's not a permanently installed part. They might pick it up and walk away with it, and then you're asking me why the microwave at work is no longer in the house. Or you think I'm an idiot because there is no microwave and you got to move in, right? So we don't touch anything that's not permanently installed. Normal operating controls. What does that mean? I love this one.
The buttons, normal operating control, buttons, knobs.
Okay, yeah. So like light switches, thermostats, things like that. Do I know how to make an HVAC system with a blown fuse go in and function without the thermostat? Yeah. Am I going to do that during a home inspection? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'm not going to be in there hot wiring things and making things come on just so I can test them. I'm going to go to the thermostat, I'm going to hit the button. If it does nothing, I'm going to tell you, hey, it does nothing. You have an HVAC guy come out here and take care of it. Okay. All right. Operate means exactly that. I'm going to cause something to function. Readily accessible. When I say something has to be readily accessible, what does that mean to you guys? Mr. Dumpy. I love that show, by the way.
It means that you can actually show and visibly see it, like flooring underneath the rug, with the couch on top, that's not readily accessible.
Right, so readily accessible means I can walk right up to it. I've got ample space to work. How many of you knew that I need at least 36 inches all the way around the water heater, all the way around an electrical panel, and 36 inches by state law, or else I can't touch it. I do, but you get what I'm saying.
Even the ones that are installed like the corner of a garage.
Yep, so all shelving, everything. So for you guys that do a lot of listings, this is how you prep your house. This is how you prep your house for the inspection. Make sure your sellers have moved all those items away from attic accesses. Attic accesses are readily accessible. Crawl space access is readily accessible. So on and so forth. All right. To state means to discuss or convey in writing. There'll be times here in a few minutes where we're going to do this. You'll see where it says the home inspector shall state or the home inspector shall describe. Shut down. It's another good one. What does shut down mean? I'll answer it for you. Shut down means that when I walk over to it, there was no power readily supplied to that unit. It is not my job, nor my responsibility, nor am I trained to determine why. Right? Now, can I spend 30 minutes trying to get a hold of the listing agent or trying to get a hold of the seller or getting a hold of the buyer's agent to call the listing agent to find out why there's no power? I have 3.5 hours on site, guys. That's it. And it doesn't matter if the house is 1,800 square feet or 4,800 square feet. I have 3.5 hours to 4 hours on site to do a home inspection. So if I walk over to a unit or if I get to the main electrical panel and the range is off or the water heater is off, I'm going to make one phone call and say, hey, is there a reason it's off? Can I turn it back on? If you don't answer me, I don't turn it back on. All right. If you tell me I can, I'm going to make you text me or email me and tell me in writing that I can, and then I'm going to do it. Okay. So that's a big deal. Home inspectors lose their licenses over this every single week. Fun fact, public knowledge, public record, you can go on the home inspector license board and you can look at every home inspector that's ever been reported for anything ever. Wow. Yes, by their license number. So feel free to go look me up. All right. Shall means the inspector will do it. If they say the inspector shall, that means the inspector will do it unless there's some sort of a adverse condition that prevents me from doing it. Okay. An inspector may means that it's at the inspector's discretion. He may not. If he can do it safely and not damage the home or damage himself, he may do it. All right. Technically exhaustive. This is another one that has always been kind of a point of contention between my industry and your industry. What does technically exhaustive mean? The definition is difficult, but I'll give you an example. So these new ovens that we have, they're like Wi-Fi capable, and they do air frying, they do baking, they do broiling, they do all this other crap. I didn't stand there for 2 hours and push every single button on that stove, right? I didn't run it through its 4-hour cleaning cycle. I didn't do all that, right? It's not technically exhaustive. Walk over, turned it on, grabbed my thermal gun, looked at it under clear, said, yep, came on, got hot, turned it back off and walked away. Right, so we're not required to stand there and go through this technically exhaustive thing to make sure that that particular model works completely. Okay, it came on, it got warm, it turned it off. End of story. All right, to probe, listing agents have learned with this one. I get it. Please understand that we are required by the home inspector license report, required, and I'm going to show it to you here in writing here in just a few minutes, to probe any area that could be suspected of rot. Required. if I go, and I literally have had this phone call, I had one of my inspectors, no longer with me, did not probe an area. So he looked at it, he's like, yes, he wrote in the report, slight discoloration, recommend further evaluation. When I went out to do the repair evaluation, I grabbed that particular area to pull myself underneath the deck, and when I did, it crumbled in my hand. So because he didn't probe, he had no idea. As I said, he's no longer with me. But, story for a different time. Abnormal or harmful. At no point in time when I use the words abnormal or harmful, am I talking about people. The health of people, the ability of people to be able to live in the house safely. That's not what I'm talking about. Abnormal or harmful means to the house or to the system or to the component that I'm looking at. Okay, i.e., I can't turn that thing on because I don't know why it's off. And if I do turn it back on, it could cause abnormal or harmful conditions to the home, or it could damage the system. Nobody cares if I get home. Okay. If I burn the house down, I mean, my wife, if I burn the house down, a lot of people care real fast, right? So we're not doing anything that's going to be abnormal or harmful to the house. Fair enough? All right, so before we get into all of that, you saw all the really tiny writing, right? I'm not going to expect you guys to hit that. I'm going to hit the highlights for you. Are there any questions on terminology? Is there any terminology that you heard from a home inspector where you're like, what are you talking about? You're here to clarify. What do you got?
Is this something that you guys could send to us?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Kate has access to it. So you guys should just go to either send a link or, yeah, it's all we have. And our signals. We're good. All right. Yeah, so all this is going to be available to you. Okay. So no, you don't need to take notes, just enjoy the show. That's what we're all right, so purpose and scope. Home inspector shall provide a written contract signed by the client before the home inspection is performed. You guys all, everybody in this room has a privilege license, correct? You can own properties, you can do what you need to do without being supervised, correct? Right? Yeah, I mean, I don't need anybody's permission. I don't need to be walked inside of a home. I have full access to super and showing time and all that other jazz. However, without that written signed contract, I am trespassing the moment I set foot on a property that I am not under contract to inspect. And the contract is not complete. Now, this is what's being updated for, so this is 2020, what's being updated for the 2022, 2023 is that it's going to say, and the inspector. Because that is a complete contract. So the client has reviewed the inspection contract, there's been an agreement on price and what services I am going to render, and then they signed it, and then I agreed to do the service. At that point, I can set foot on any property and be ready to rock and roll. But until that happens, and many of you that work with me have gotten that phone call at 9 a.m. or 8:30 going, hey, and it still hasn't signed the contract and they're not answering my phone calls. I give you 20 minutes. And I gotta go. Excellent point. Can you sign for the client? Can you?
Can do whatever we want, but is it right or not?
It's not wrong. Not wrong. You absolutely can sign for your client. Just understand that if that client goes to you, listen, hey, I'm coming to you. Because now you take the responsibility for the entire thing. Okay. So in very rare instances, would I recommend signing the inspection agreement for the client?
No.
Cool. All right. You've been warned. Don't do it unless you absolutely have to. There was one instance where the client was in Germany and they were like in a field exercise or something. We had to get signed, and I told the agent, I'm like, look, I'm not going to try. It was just one of those things I had to stay, you know. But please sign it so we can get this done for the soul. Okay. All right. So provide that written contract. We will. The home inspector shall inspect readily visible and readily accessible installed systems and components. Now you see why verbiage is extremely correct. And the famous words of Trenton Reed. Words are important. Words matter, right? The words matter. Inspect readily visible and readily accessible installed systems and components. We will submit a written report that describes those systems and components, states which ones do not work correctly, state which ones were present and which ones were not. And then, this is another big one that I need everybody to make sure you understand and ask questions if you need to. We are required in this statement right here, D, to write our comments in a very specific format. That format is DDID. So we will describe each system or component pursuant to legal stuff. State how the condition is defective. So we're going to describe, we're going to talk about the defect. Then we're going to explain the implications of defective conditions reported. So those are the ones that everybody hates. That's where I'm like, hey, yeah, up into and including death is or sometimes it was, I rarely use that one, but just in case. That's why I don't do that. All right, and then we also obviously want to finish by directing the client to a course of action, be it repair, regular monitoring, further evaluation by a licensed so-and-so, depending on what it is. All right, and then at the very end, we also, as you can see, we have to state the name, license number, and an actual pending signature for that inspector. Okay, questions?
Not with you as power study.
So I got around that by standing in front of the guys at the home inspector licensure board, signing a piece of paper, taking a picture of it, scanning it, and then now that's what we upload.
Nice. Okay.
But they had to see me.
I mean,
yeah, they don't play. They don't play around. They snatch licenses for anything. All right, so point 4, we're going to submit a summary page pursuant to, again, general statute, so on and so forth. Home inspectors may, what does may mean?
At your discretion.
At my own discretion. Home inspectors may report observations and conditions, including safety or habitability concerns, or render opinions of items in addition to those required in paragraph B of this rule. Paragraph B says the home inspector may exclude systems and components from the inspection if the requested client agrees to have those things excluded. Okay. What is an instance where I would exclude something?
if an HVAC is brand new.
Okay. Or if we know it's not working. Right. So we have an HVAC system, hasn't run in 10 years. But, you know, the house that an investor's buying and getting ready to flip, they can say, hey, dude, don't even worry about that. And I can take it out of the report, but I have to state that I'm doing so at the request of the client. Okay. But it is fully done. One of the inspections that we do that's very specific to pillar to post that we designed for our investor clients here at Fayetteville is a 4-point inspection. The other things that we cover are a full structural evaluation, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. I don't touch cabinets, doors, windows. I don't talk about the carpets. I don't talk about the panel walls or the sheetrock or any of that stuff. Structure, HVAC, plumbing, electrical. That's it. Okay. So, general limitations. Home inspections done in accordance with this section are not technically exhaustive. Why we needed to know that term. See, I don't know where a good spot to be is. So here's another one. As far as general limitations are concerned, and this is going to apply to your investor clients as well. Buildings with 4 or fewer dwelling units and individually owned residential units within multifamily buildings and their attached garages or carports. So under one inspection contract, I can only inspect 4 doors. As long as that building, that roof, is not over more than 4 doors. So let's say we have a condo complex where I've got 4 units on one side, 4 units on the other side, shares a roof, shares a foundation. I can do one side, can't do the other. I can do 1 in this side, 1 in that side, 2 in this side, 2 in that side, but never more than 4 under the same roof. All right. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It gets a little weird sometimes. Like I've had folks that are like, oh, it's 16 units, but it's four units. I'm like, bingo, you got 4 contracts, let's rock and roll, let's do it. Right.
So as long as you have a separate contract for each 4,
bingo.
you're good. Okay.
Yeah. So it can be done, just as you're expected creative enough to figure out a way to get you where you need to go.
Interesting.
All right. Oh.
When you do the reports that are just the 4 items for like investors, when you say structural, does that include roof?
Yep. So that's roof, walls, and foundation.
Okay.
Assuming I can see the walls.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions on that before we move on? Okay. All right. So continue on purpose and scope. We will submit that. So did it change? No, it didn't change. There we go. So general exclusions are very, very important. Please, I need you guys to really understand these. Home inspectors are not required to report on life expectancy of any component or system. Please don't ask me how much longer the roof has. I don't know, number 1. But number 2, I can't legally answer that question. The closest you will ever get me to say is, it's at least 2/3 of the way through its predicted life cycle. So on a 15-year roof, you do the math, that's probably roughly about how old it is, right? But again, you will never get me to put that in writing. That's just us having a conversation as professionals so that you have kind of a better understanding of where it's at, right? The causes of the need for a repair. Like what happened to it? Yeah, I've been here as long as you have. I have no idea what happened to it. It just doesn't work. But I know who we need to talk to get it fixed. And here's what I would recommend you do. Methods, materials, and cost of corrections and repairs. Suitability of a property for any specialized use. We got a lot of these already this year. Well, I want to buy this house and turn it into a daycare. Is it going to be cool for that? Okay. I want to know. I want to know what you're going to do with it. It's zoned residential or dual use. I'm going to inspect it as a residence. Now, if you turn around and decide you want to use it as a commercial property after that, hey man, more power to you. However, just know that I'm not looking at fire code requirements. I'm not looking at ingress and egress requirements by the state and all the other jazz. I'm not licensed to do that. Okay. So in the instance of that, if somebody comes in and if you know for a fact that your client is absolutely going to use that house as a daycare, or they're going to start their business in that house, that's going to be its sole function, don't tell me. Because if you do, I'm out. That's it. You need a commercial inspection at that point. Okay. Compliance or non-compliance with codes, ordinance, statutes, regulatory requirements, and restrictions. So some of you guys have been in the game a while. How many inspectors have you been with that have quoted you code? Not my thing. Not a code enforcement person. It's not what I do. Right? I'm there to provide a functional assessment of the systems and components in the home. Not to say, and clients will ask me all the time, well, is that a code? Maybe, but I don't know. It depends on which code you look at. Here's why we don't get into it. It's not because I'm an idiot and I don't know what the codes are. The reason we don't get into it is because the code requirement is based off of the age of the construction of the home. Yep. It's also based off of when that addition was built, and when that addition was built, and when that room was remodeled. So in one house, I might have 5 separate codes that I have to go off of. Ladies and gentlemen, I got 3.5 to 4 hours. Right? You're talking about a week's worth of work of research and making sure I understand the codes, and then holding each particular area. You know, how many of you guys have been in a house that's, I don't know, Haymount? They love doing this down in Haymount. The house is from the early 1900s and it's had 3 additions over the last 100 years. Do you know when they were? Rarely, right? You rarely know when they are because they don't keep permit records past what, like the 70s, 60s, maybe. So that's why we don't get into code. That's why we're forbidden from getting into code. And any inspector that starts talking code to one of your clients, you should make them be quiet immediately because they're going to get themselves in trouble as well as you. Okay. The market value of the property or its marketability, your job. I don't get in your job. I ask you don't get in mine. Right? That way everybody's doing what they're good at. Okay. Advisability or inadvisability of purchase. Hey, Mr. Home Inspector, will you buy this house? Now, my favorite answer is hell no. I would never buy this house. But only because I already own a couple houses in my life. My butt up. This house, however, if you like it, you should definitely buy it. Because there's nothing going on in this house that can't be repaired. Okay.
I've heard you say that.
The pause was for dramatic effect. It was we had the pause at the end because if you just go right into it, it's not nearly as interesting. I like to watch y'all sweat every once in a while. Sometimes it's fun. I'm sweaty, you know, in the moment. So sometimes it's fun about you guys sweat just a little bit. Now, I don't do that on the first time. Kate and I have been working together for years, so sometimes it's fun to watch her get a little hot under the collar and word. Any component or system that was non-inspected, we don't talk about it, right? That's the beauty of North Carolina. If it's not talked about in the report, doesn't mean I didn't inspect it. It means there's nothing wrong with it. There's no reason for me to talk about it. Okay. The presence or absence of pests such as wood destroying organisms, rodents, or insects. I am not a termite specialist. I am not a rodent or animal control specialist. I am none of those things. Now, that being said, if I'm under the house and the entire girder is completely eaten up with some sort of wood destroying organism, I'm going to say that, right? However, what I'm not going to do is get into debate with anybody of whether it's termites or powder post beetles or You know what I mean? Like I'm not a specialist, it's not what I do. I just know the curve of that stuff. And you definitely, it's not a moisture issue. It's clearly from some sort of wood destroying organism and needs to be further reviewed and repaired or replaced. And here's how you go about doing that. Right. So that's how the inspection would go in that instance. And then, yeah, not required to report on cosmetic damage, underground items, or items not installed. Got another class where we talk about underground oil tanks, which is kind of a big deal, especially in the older parts of Fayetteville. You guys ever seen like two little pipes sticking out of the ground somewhere within 10 feet of the house? One of them looks like it's got a little hat on it. That's an underground oil tank. Anytime you see that, you should absolutely. So we actually lost an inspector 10 years ago. He failed. He one of those. They had built an addition over. They built an addition over on the back of the house over the abandoned oil tank. As he was climbing, under the house, he gave way, and he was trapped under there for days. Nobody ever. He died. So now imagine that's you and your client, and you're walking through, looking at the roof, doing all the things that you guys do when you're at a house, and you guys fall things, right? Just be vigilant of that. Totally different class. I can always come back and teach another class on that. Not the point. Just understand that if your home inspection has occurred, right? If your home inspection has occurred, and this has actually happened, this is a true story. So the home inspection occurred, there was a ton of stuff all over the unit, right? Houses in shambles. It was an investor client. That's just kind of the nature of the beast. I mean, 2/3 of those I wear a respirator throughout the entire week, right? Once they cleared everything out, after the inspection was over, obviously it was covered up with stuff, but there was an underground tank, and then the investor was super upset because they had to go through the pain of having to have it filled and all that other stuff. Now, one, am I required to report on underground items? No. Would I have said something about it if I saw it and it wasn't covered up with personal items and debris? Yes, I would. But I didn't see it, which we'll get into here in a little bit about being able to see things and not see things. So, any discussion about these? Any questions about any of these exclusions? Okay, moving on. Not required to offer warranties or guarantees. Calculate the strength I'm just going to read these to you real fast, okay? And then we'll talk about it. Offer warranties or guarantees. Calculate the strength, adequacy, or efficiency of any system or component. Enter any area or perform any procedure that may damage the property or its components, or be dangerous to or adversely affect the health of the inspector. Operating any system or component that is shut down or inoperable. Operating any system or component that does not respond to normal operating controls. Right. So again, the verbiage is extremely important. Move personal items, panels, furniture, equipment, plant life, soil, snow, ice, or debris that obstructs access or visibility. Determine the presence or absence of any suspected adverse environmental conditions or hazardous substances, including mold, toxins, carcinogens, noise, contaminants in the building or in the soil, in the water, or in the air. How many of you guys thought that we absolutely are looking for mold every time we go in a house? If I see it, cool. We'll talk about it. But I'm not looking for it. Determine the presence or absence of, no, we already talked about that one. Effectiveness of any system installed to control or remove suspected hazardous substances, i.e. radon mitigation systems. Not part of the home inspection in North Carolina. Totally separate system. You have to have a radon mitigation specialist come out and look at that particular piece of equipment. Now, should your home inspector make mention of the fact that there is one installed? Yes. Are we inspecting it? No, absolutely not. Predict future condition, including failure of components. We're going to come back to number 11. Project operating costs of components. Evaluate acoustical characteristics of any system or component, i.e. that thing's really loud. I mean, spend the extra money and buy the one that sounds loud. You know, like maybe they were cheap, and you just bought the one that makes a crap ton of noise and there's everything else. Inspect equipment or accessories that are not listed as components to be inspected in this section, and disturb insulation, except as required as in Rule 0.114, which we'll get into in a little bit. All right, so go back to number 11. Predict future condition, including failure of components. If the last time I touch that oven was the last time it's ever going to work, I find that. Am I at fault? Did I break the oven? Or was the oven just defective and it was ready to go? I cannot tell you how many listening agents, and I feel for you. I do. It's a terrible situation. I'm fully sympathetic. I fully understand. But understand that in order for a home inspector to be derelict in their duties, they would have to intentionally not do something that they were supposed to do, or you would have to be able to prove in court beyond all reasonable doubts that the inspector did whatever it is that you're claiming they did with malice and bad intent. I.e., I had somebody call one time because an inspector was to raise the blinds in the window, and I teach all my inspectors, whenever you raise blinds, one hand goes underneath and you help it up, and then you help it back down. Sometimes when you help it up, it all just comes with you, right? It happens. You try our damnedest to get it back in place, but sometimes it just can't. So what do? Typically, I'll set it on the bed, or I'll take it out and put it on the counter with a note that says, hey, you know, this failed under normal operating conditions. I'm really sorry, but so fast forward, it finally comes back. I get a call from the listing agent, and she is mad. Oh, she's mad. They said they had a general contractor come out, replace it. It cost like $700. I was like, whoa, listen. Yeah, it's bananas, right? Well, stick with me. That's not a good one. So I asked her, I said, well, ma'am, I said, you have to understand. I was like, I read the report. I saw the picture that the inspector took of it. Like, you know, it's unfortunate. And I'm really sorry that that happened. But are you telling me that you believe that my inspector ripped that down on purpose with malice and ill intent in his heart? She's like, yes. Okay. Here's the number to my insurance provider. You're more than welcome to call and file a claim, and we'll get y'all taken. Right? Like he just like ran across the room like WWE style. I just kicked it. Oh, come on, man. It just fell apart. Right? Yeah, it was bananas. So that's really what that you know, I can't predict the future conditions. If the air conditioning is working and I've got pictures of the temperature deltas in my report, and then you guys, you know, your client moves in a week later, the damn thing doesn't work. Sorry. Right? Which is why we cover ourselves, obviously, in those reports. We say, hey, I operated it in cooling mode for this amount of time. Here was the temperature delta that I was looking for. Here's pictures of the delta that shows that it reached that capacity. Awesome. I don't know if it's going to work tomorrow when it's 30 years old. I don't know if the last time I turned that thing off was the last time it was ever going to work. There's no way for me to know that. All I can tell you is what was happening at the time when I was there. So for this reason, when a client says, well, how much life is left in that thing? Could be 10 years, could be 10 minutes. No idea. All I know is it was working while I was there. All right, so questions on general exclusions. I put this up here with this tiny little print, more or less so you guys can see that there's a lot of them. There are a lot of exclusions and a lot of things that we are not required to do, and some things that it is frankly illegal for us to do. Okay, so if there are no questions here, we'll go to the next thing. Inspectors shall not offer or perform any act or service contrary to law. Please don't ask me to cut locks. Don't ask me to break into the windows. I'm not even going to do that stuff. If I can't walk up and get the key out of the water box and open the door and go in, I'm not going in. Okay. Just that. Don't ask me to take crawl space doors off the hinges. Yeah. You know people do it all the time. Like, just take it off. I'm like, what? I can. I have the wherewithal. I have the tools. I have all that stuff. What I don't have is the right to do that. If it were my house, would I do it? Yeah, absolutely. I had a client tell me one time they had done an addition on the house. This is a Haymountain house, and I go in through the one crawl space access that they have. And a contractor had basically knocked a hole in the original foundation wall of the original part of the home to run HVAC ducts through to the new addition, right? I see it every day, right? I write it up every single time I see it because we've literally modified the original foundation with no support, no additional framing, no nothing, right? So we just banged a giant 6-foot hole in the foundation. So he said to me, the return duct takes up most of the hole, but just feel free to smoosh it out of the way. Now he's the same size as me, you know? 6'1", 230 pounds, like he's a big dude, right? And you know, and he's like, yeah, I do it all the time. I was like, oh, stop telling me things. And listen, I'm not doing it. I was like, if you want to destroy your ductwork, brother, your house, go for it. It's not my house. I'm not going to do that. It was a pre-listing inspection. Yeah, it's just like, look, man, I'm not doing that. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm absolutely not going to do that for you. So anyhow, not necessarily illegal, but just doesn't make good sense to do certain things. The beauty of our standard of practice is it absolutely does leave quite a bit up to the discretion of the home inspector on the site. He or she is the professional on site. He or she is the expert on site, and he or she is going to be the best judge of what they can and cannot do safely, or what they can and cannot do legally, okay, in accordance with this SOP. All right, so questions there? All right, awesome. So before we get into structural components, does anybody want more food? Want to take like 5 minutes, go to the restroom, grab some water, any of that stuff? Or we want to keep rocking? Beautiful.
Can we get you some water or anything?
Yeah, I'm just going to take a quick little water break. All right, any questions on any of the SOP stuff? All right, so now we're going to get into here in just a few minutes on what the SOP actually says about the inspection components, the inspection of components themselves, and what we're required to do, okay? All right, so section 1106, home inspector shall inspect structural components, including foundations, floors, walls, columns, or pipes, or excuse me, columns or piers, ceilings, and roofs. Ooh, yeah, these are all local. All the photos I'm going to show you are local.
Wow.
All right. So when we're inspecting structural components, you guys said I could draw on this, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Kind of a knuckle dragger. I'd be better with pictures, so bear with me. You got? Is anybody zoomed in?
Looks like we may have one. I don't know.
Okay. Well, for you guys that are zoomed in, I'm sorry. You're not going to be able to see this part, I don't think. So cracks, right? Very few times when you see cracks are they actually structural in nature. Very few times. Here's what we're looking for. So we got a regular crack that just stays uniform the entire way through, right? No big deal. 9 times out of 10, when you see something like that, it's in a veneer. Where maybe you have a small failure of a lintel underneath the supporting structures, or maybe the brick wall ties have started to corrode and they've moved a little, so we get a little cracking, right? Whenever you see this in concrete slabs, 9 times out of 10, that's just basic shrinkage. The concrete shrinks when it goes through its curing process, okay? How many of you thought concrete dried? Yeah, this is okay. I didn't know. Yeah, so concrete doesn't dry. Concrete actually goes through a chemical curing process that actually takes weeks, right? So when they pour a slab foundation, they can't build anything on that for weeks. Throughout that chemical process, what happens is the minerals and acids and all the different things in the concrete mix heat up. They get crazy hot and they expand. Throughout that heating process, it dispels all the liquid, dries, and then it contracts. Throughout that process, if the mix was not right on the money and the weather was not right on the money and all the perfect conditions were in place, it's going to dry too fast or cure too fast. The liquid's going to expel too fast, and we end up with these little shrinkage cracks. Not structural, not a big deal. Did a new construction home yesterday. The entire slab from corner to corner had one of these. Going like this the whole way through it. Poor buyer's freaking out. Like, my whole slab's cracked. I was like, come down here, run your hand across it. Like this. He said, yeah, I don't feel anything. I said, right. Pretty good crack, fine. Which brings me to the next kind of crack. Floor surface here, crack. Floor surface is now up here. Moved that way. That is typically significant structural issues, right? So we changed planes, it did this. Anytime that, so this is looking at it from the side. Anytime we have crack and then another crack that does something along those lines. So it shifted this way, right? We're shearing, it's sheared, right? That is typically structural. Anytime the two parts of one thing crack down the middle and then move off plane from the other one, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, right? Those are typically structural in nature. What that means is that at some point, the foundation of the home it succumbed to gravity, right? And it started going down, and the rest of the house was still holding strong. Right? So those are structural defects. Those are the things that we're looking for. If you'll notice, with the exception of this one, this is a veneer. Veneers don't behave. It's literally just stuck to the actual structure of the house. This is not a structural component. That crack and that crack, I want you to pay attention to something very specific with regard to those cracks. Have you ever, in nature, seen something that grows perfectly straight? Trees, bushes, anything? No, nothing. Nature doesn't do anything in perfectly straight lines. So, like I said a minute ago, structural failures are typically an indication that gravity won, right? The house fought back, gravity won. Gravity is a naturally occurring condition, right? We're all subject to it, okay? There's no way to beat it. It will always be there. We do our absolute best when we build houses, and we compact the soil, and we do everything that we possibly can, but sometimes we lose, okay? The way we know we lost is when we see cracks like this. There is not a straight line to be found. Typically, they'll come at the tops of doors, tops of windows, any openings, crawl space vents, crawl space doors, right? We see these odd cracks that come off at 45-degree angles, and they curve, and they do all kinds of weird things. That is, I won't say always, but it is almost always an early indicator that there is some degree of structural failure with one of the underlying structural components in that house, between the roof and the foundation, okay? So for you guys, when you're in the field, right, and you see cracks like that around doors, windows, crawl space accesses, things of that nature, you can be, I would say, within 80% assured that there is some degree of structural issue. If you are doing this and you see this in a client's house that you are getting ready to list, you need a foundation specialist. The absolute worst thing that can happen to you is I show up working for the buyer and I go underneath that house and I find $50,000 worth of structural damage.
Yeah.
And your deal is now gone.
Yeah.
Right? I understand that that brings a lot of frustration. It's not lost on us. I assure you it's not lost on us. Okay. But material facts are material facts, right? Now, whether it comes out as part of the pre-listing inspection or it comes out as part of the buyer's inspection, it doesn't change the fact that we now have a material fact that we have to deal with. Okay. I would much rather find it earlier on in the process, but just understand the moment I walk in a house and I start seeing cracks like that, I don't need to look at anything else. I need to go underneath and start looking at the foundation. I need to start looking at the roof. I need to start opening doors and windows to see if we have binding, to see if things are actually functioning the way that they're supposed to. So those are things that you can be doing while your clients are playing with the cabinets and running the faucets and looking at the backsplashes and all that stuff. Look for these. Walk around looking for these. Open and close doors. Doesn't take a second. Walk down the hallway, open the door, close it. Make sure that it does. Right? Walk into a room while they're looking and measuring the size of it. Open a window. Make sure it stays up. Close the window. Did it bind? Was it difficult to open? Did it get halfway up and then start to turn sideways? Those are indications of potential structural issues because they happen first at anytime we cut a hole in a foundation wall, we make a weak point, right? So that weak point is going to be the first point of failure 9 times out of 10 when we have structural issues, okay? Which is why our doors and windows are always the first place. You notice door, lower corner of door.
Is that something that if you're doing like a pre-listing inspection and it comes back with something like that,
Yes.
with the with the homeowner's insurance company, is that covered?
It would depend on their policy. Yeah, but that's where I would start.
Yeah.
I would absolutely start there. Best case is usually have a foundation specialist. There are several companies here locally that will come out and do free inspections. Have foundation specialists come out, take a look at it, give you an estimate on what the issues are, a written report of what the issues are and what an estimate is to report it, and then take it to your insurance company. Now, the policy is going to determine whether or not they'll take care of it, but that's where you should always start.
Yeah.
100%. Yes.
So these cracks aren't starting in the corners of these frames.
Not
if
these.
they're different, like say the top corner of that door, it splits off of that. You see that typically a lot in those older Haymon homes. is that gonna be the same situation? Okay. And then the same ones, even if your roof, like your ceiling, you know, you have spiders off the corners randomly. And is that still the same situation?
So now we're getting into semantics a little bit.
Just
I'm gonna say why I say that. It's not a negative comment. I'm saying it's in the semantics, because now it becomes a question of what the surface material is.
okay.
Is it drywall or is it plaster?
Okay.
Because plaster behaves very differently. Plaster never cracks in a straight line.
Yeah.
Ever. So if you're in an older home that's covered in, you know, a simple plaster mix and then painted, there's no way to know, right? You just, until you get somebody underneath the house to look at the actual foundation component. So, but in a drywall, both of these are drywall. Almost every time, that's an indicator. All right, any other questions on that? If not, we're moving on. So these are basement walls. These are two types of failures that are always 100% of the time, always, and one of the rare times you'll hear me say never and always, this is one of those always moments. Those two types of cracks where you have that is called a stress or tension crack, which is a structural failure, is considered catastrophic. It's one of the few times in a report you will ever see me use the word catastrophic failure, but that is considered a catastrophic failure of that entire corner of that house. Okay. And this one, it's a little difficult to see. Hey, is there any way to like, bring windows down or bring those cheeks, bring the lights down a little bit? Because this one's the worst one that you could possibly run into.
That one's falling.
Oh, now it is. Ah, there we go.
There we go.
Awesome. Stay awake.
Oh, yes.
See that? So when we have perimeter basement walls that fail this way, that is the house is. So we move beyond catastrophic failure of the foundation into the home is no longer livable, and people need to be evacuated. So that's how big of a deal these structural issues can potentially be. That horizontal crack ran across the entire wall in a basement. Now it's about 12 feet in, came out. At that point, my termite guy and I both went outside, and I called the client and I said, the inspection's complete. Not because I'm done, but because the home is not safe for people to be living in. We absolutely need a foundation specialist, structural engineer, you know, and you know, most of you in this room can attest. I don't wear red flags very often. I'm not a, you know, I'm not an easily excitable guy. But that's a big deal. Everybody needs to know more about that.
Did you ever figure out what caused it or hear that?
Yep. Oh, I knew what caused it as soon as I looked at it. Because on the other side of this wall is a massive magnolia tree. Who said the roots? Yeah, roots grow out and down, right? So if there's something on the other side of this wall that's pushing against it, it's doing two things. It's pushing against the wall, and it's also loosening and weakening the supportive soils that hold this wall up. So it's a twofer, really, at the end of the day. This was bound to fail at some point. Now, as best I know, they actually just backfilled this entire thing with dirt, and there's just no longer a basement in that house. That was the only repair. All right, so we talked about describing, right? So the home inspector shall describe the type of foundation, the type of floor structure, the type of wall structure, the type of columns or piers, the type of ceiling structure, and the type of roof structure. Now, when I say type, what does that mean to you guys?
Whether it's A-frame or.
Is it stick-built rafters or is it engineered trusses? Is it TGI engineered floor joists, or is it dimensional standard 2x6, 2x8, 2x10 floor joists? Right. So type. Foundation type. Is it a crawl space? Is it a daylight basement? Is it a full basement? Is it a full finished basement? Is it a whatever? Right. So we have to describe those types and materials. Here's some of the stuff that we have to discuss. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
What if I told you a typical home inspection has almost 1,200 inspection points that your home inspector has memorized? Almost 1,200 individual points. All right, here's the good one. Home inspector shall probe structural components where deterioration is suspected. People, please don't get mad at me. All right. When I probe into rotted wood. Now, feel free to get mad at me if you see me with a pry bar under there just making a hell of a mess, right? Some professionals, no reason to do that. I don't care how many followers you're trying to get on Instagram. There's no reason to do that ever in somebody's house. However, we do have an approved probe. It's well, actually, it's about that big. No, about that big. So this is actually probably, I would say, almost twice the size of the probe that we actually are supposed to be using. Okay? Everyone always laughs when I said this, but there is a two-fingered method. If this is the component, I am not holding the probe like this. I'm holding the probe with 2 fingers and applying pressure. If my fingers slide along it and this doesn't give way, the chances are pretty good it's still structurally intact, right? If I'm holding it like this and it just pushes right through with no issues, I'm going to take a picture of it. I'm going to pull it back out and put it back in my pocket, and we're on to the next thing. All right. At that point, with that little bit of pressure, we should not have any deviation at all. There should be no deformation or deviation of that structural component. Okay. The home inspector shall enter underfloor crawl spaces, basements, and attic spaces, except when the access is obstructed, when the entry could damage the property, or when dangerous or adverse situations are suspected. This is the one. People ask all the time, why didn't you walk on the roof? But 10, 12 pitch, and I'm not Spider-Man. Why didn't walk on the roof? Also, most insurance companies and most workman comp policies won't cover a home inspector that walks on a roof that's over a 6 and 12 pitch. Or most of the houses in Fayetteville. 6 or 8. Yeah, so anything over that, if I fall off, I'm screwed. My insurance company is not even going to want to talk to me about it. Right? So, going into crawl spaces. Excellent one happened to me, let's say Wednesday. So Monday. Actually, just happened to me on Monday. Went to go into the crawl space, and the primary toilet drain line came right down in front of the doorway and went that way. That's what it's been doing for years.
Leaking. Oh, Lord.
Guess who didn't crawl through that?
Not you.
Me. I'm not crawling through somebody's waste just because you want me to go in a crawl space. I love you dearly. I do. I believe in what we do. I'm very much dedicated to what it is that we do, and I believe in taking care of people, but not at the expense of my own health. Not crawling through food, folks. It's not going to happen. Okay. Not happening. Access is obstructed. I am the largest man in my company. Everyone else is significantly smaller than me for a reason. Things that are obstructed to me are not necessarily obstructed to them. Okay. Pipes are in the way, or the attic access door is not big enough. I mean, I've literally seen attic access doors where I can touch them on either side with my fingers. Why did you go in there? I can't get my head through there. The only thing I can do is stick my camera in there and take a video and do this, and then try to look at the video. Right. So those obstructions. I've been asked to make holes bigger in the ceilings. Modify the property. Okay. I know a lot of this sounds silly. Just understand that just like shampoo bottle labels, if I'm saying it, it's because it happened. Sorry for everything.
Yeah.
Don't eat it, don't swallow it.
Yeah, if you swallow, what do they say? If you swallow more than what was used for watching.
Swallowed or something.
Yeah.
I'm practicing. I haven't let any of you.
You know, like following.
I wasn't.
When I was young and we had to go to the back, we had books and I had books.
All right, so access being obstructed. I'm not going to be on the property. I'm not going to modify the property in order to gain access. If I can get in there safely, fantastic. If I cannot get in there safely, I'm going to tell you that. But I am required to put it in the report. I did not go in the crawl space. Here's why. If you can manage to get this condition cleared up in a reasonable amount of time prior to the end of the transaction, I'll be more than happy to come back out and go take a look at it. However, Today, it's not happening. So report signs of abnormal or harmful water penetration into the building or signs of abnormal or harmful condensation on building components. When I say abnormal and harmful, what am I talking about?
To the house.
To the house.
To the building or the component, correct? So, good probing, not so good probing. Mr. Murphy, can I get you to put that light off one more time? You just stuck in the back, I'm sorry. That is, in fact, a shit ton of water. Yeah. Yep. So this is what can potentially happen when your air handler is in crawl space and the primary drain line, there's condensate drain line that's supposed to go and exit outside of the foundation wall is clogged.
No.
Your air handler, a standard 2.5 to 3 ton unit, makes 40 gallons of condensate per hour. Per hour.
No.
Yes. So a standard air handler, the other half of the heat pump, right?
That's just a day.
Can create on very hot days where it's running constantly up to 40 gallons of condensate water per hour. Holy crap. Say that again?
It can be 960 in one day.
That's what 960 looks like.
Oh.
I did.
Yeah, I don't ever do math in public, so thank you for that.
Wow.
You're better than me. So, so the next time a home inspector tells you that the condensate drain line, the primary condensate drain line is potentially clogged and it should definitely be checked out. Imagine if that was in the attic, where most of them are.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So I scared the hell out of you now. What's happening? There we go.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
It's your moment, TJ.
Can you advance the slide for me? Okay.
Once they fixed it, it was so it was running all day, and it reported we was moving stuff in.
So it should just go. All right. Okay. So after that, we start getting into exterior components, but I have an hour on the money. So, so that is the structural part. We have 6 more parts to this, where we talk about how we do electrical, how we do plumbing, how we do exterior and interior components and things of that nature. I would love to come back once a month if you guys would have me and produce the other parts.
And feed us.
And feed me, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. We'll do something a little different next time. I'll let y'all love the tacos.
Oh, yeah.
So are there any questions? Did I cover anything that was just absolutely mind blowing to anybody in the room?
One thing, so when I'm talking about obstruction, I don't know if everybody knows it or not. So if the home inspector goes, and I think this is kind of what you were talking about, John, that they go and there's like a dresser or there's something underneath the rug, they can't, home inspectors can't move that stuff, but they would run underneath there, and then all of a sudden they're, you know, they're like, oh my God, we didn't know this was here. But if he doesn't have access to it, you can't move the furniture. So I don't know if you're gonna do that or not.
I'm gonna give you guys a case study. Just real fast to touch on that point. I'm just gonna show you how bad it is. Houses in 7. Home inspector went out, did his thing, termite guy went out, did this thing. Everything came back that there was on the foundation wall underneath the kitchen, there was evidence of past termite, but basically looked like somebody had scrubbed it off with a brush, but there was still a stain on the concrete. Barely see it. There was a little bit of evidence left on the sill plate before it goes up into the floor system. But that was it. Like one little tube. That's all it was. Home inspector didn't say anything about it, other than just, you know, yes, there's evidence referred to your termite report for some, for additional clarification or whatever. Because again, not the termite guy, not the expert. I'm gonna say, hey, refer to that report if you want a detailed explanation. Here's what I saw. Fast forward a couple of months, I get a phone call from a very, very angry homeowner. They decided to start remodeling their kitchen. They pull down the cabinets, they pull down the backsplash, countertops, base cabinets, flooring, everything comes up. And literally from that point, going out in this direction, the entire, about a 10-foot stretch of perimeter wall was completely gone. Completely. They even ate the insulation.
Oh, gosh.
Roughly, I think it added like $22,000 to their renovation budget. And who do you think they want to pay for it? Yeah. Now, thankfully, I always have an inspection contract. And I put the contract in front of said homeowner and said, you see that part right there? So the more responsible for inspecting things I can see and access. None of this was read access. None of it was visible. There's no way humanly possible. Any person without X-ray vision was going to know that that condition was there. Question number two, and this is very important for you guys. And I'm not saying this to insult anybody, so please don't take this. This is for you to learn from. If I say further review or further more invasive evaluation is critical to determine the overall extent of damage to this particular system or component, I don't just say that for my health. I say that to protect you, me, and our client. I've had on 3 separate occasions just this year already where I've had a client say, well, my realtor said I didn't have, said that you guys always say that. Thank God you guys are saying you guys are doing the right thing. But 3 separate phone calls I've already had where the real estate agent told the client, they always write that, don't worry about it. This was one of those instances. $22,000 worth of structural damage. They had to rebuild the entire right side of the house. It was bananas. But I referred the client back to the report. I said, did you have a further more basic evaluation? No, my realtor said you guys don't say that.
But you don't put that just to put that, you put that like
if there's evidence, so for example, this crack that showed in the wall, right? Let's say I'm not in a crawl space and everything was fine. Well, those cracks didn't happen for no reason. Just means I can't see it, whatever it is. So in those instances, absolutely, I will write a further more invasive evaluation is critical in order to determine the overall extent of the issues that this could be representative of. So rest assured, when I say that, it's not a CYA. It covers our butts, right? You absolutely should never ignore that. You might see it 62 times in the report, but you should absolutely pay attention to it all 62 times. Okay. Other questions? That was fantastic, by the way. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, guys, that's my time. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys coming to hang out. Hope you guys learned. I do not know how to get a hold of it. All right. Does everybody have a cell phone? Yeah. All right.
You got my luck with work.
So you can take out your phones. Those of you who do not have my contact information, you can take out your phones. You're going to send a text to the number 88500.
Wait, sorry.
Yep. You're going to text the number, text to the number 88500. 88500. So I want to write it down. 88500, and you're going to text to that number PTPHG or Pillar 2 Post Holt Group. So Papa Tango Papa Hotel Golf.
Oh, good job. Good job.
Got it. All right. Once you get that in there, you're going to text PTPHG to 88500. Hit send. It's gonna give you a little link, and when you click on that link, it's gonna take you to my digital business card where you can get in my personal cell phone, my work number, our email addresses, our business site, my TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, all that crap. It's all there for you. Save that to your contacts. And then if there's ever a time when you guys need to talk to a home inspector, I want you just to call me, shoot me a text message.
It's not fair.
It did work for anybody.
Yeah, it worked.
In the Zoom and it'll record it to the cloud.
Thank you so much, Jen.
Yeah.